Every Italian restaurant in New Jersey believes it has a mafia story. Your cousin swears his favorite place in Nutley is connected. The pizzeria with 4 tables and a framed picture of John Gotti has a mob story. 9 times out of 10, the story is that a guy who looked like a guy came in once, ordered the veal and paid cash, and 40 years later, the owner tells it like he's a federal witness. A handful of those places, however, were actually favorites of many prominent mobsters throughout Jersey. And today we're covering 9 of those places that you can still eat at today. Some of this is court-documented history, and some of it is neighborhood lore that's been passed around New Jersey for as long as 60 years. Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe to the channel to help us grow so we can continue to bring you the best New Jersey content on YouTube. Let's begin. First up, Jimmy's Italian Restaurant in Asbury Park. This place is on Asbury Avenue, inland from the boardwalk, and coincidentally, the restaurant my parents took me to after I graduated from high school. Fun fact, the first thing you notice is that there are basically no windows, and I'm not too convinced that was an accident of architecture. Jimmy and Diane Maruca opened it in 1982 with a simple pitch. You shouldn't have to drive into Manhattan for real Italian food. CBS named it the best Italian restaurant in the metropolitan area. The Asbury Park Chamber gave it a Landmark Business Award in 2013, and there's valet parking, which is a funny thing to encounter on that stretch of Asbury Park. Sinatra ate there, Springsteen ate there, and Paul McCartney came in with his wife before his Newark Arena shows. A Beatle sat in a windowless red sauce joint in Asbury Park and had a great night. And that's before we get to the other clientele. Jimmy's has been described for decades as the working headquarters of Rosario Babe Miraglia, a longtime Genovese figure said to have inherited the Jersey Shore gambling and loan sharking rackets. He inherited them from Anthony Little Pussy Russo, a Genovese capo who ran the shore, and was shot to death in Long Branch in April of 1979. Reports over the years have named Jimmy's as a designated public meeting spot in federal organized crime cases in the late 80s and early 90s, with the crew supposedly running a private social club nearby, making the restaurant the public lobby of an operation that lived down the street. None of which stops it from being an excellent restaurant. The most dangerous thing happening to you there in 2026 is the check. Next, Portucale Restaurant and Bar in Newark. This place sits at 129 Elm Street in the Ironbound, and on paper, it's exactly what it looks like. A family-run Portuguese place with a patio, a waterfall, and a bar that sells imported cigars. Open till midnight. Good, unpretentious, packed on weekends. It also moved over $400 million in checks. On October 21st, 2014, the New Jersey Attorney General's Office and the Waterfront Commission of New York Harbor announced Operation Fistful and charged 11 members and associates of the Genovese crime family. According to the indictment, a Genovese associate named Dominic Puccio financed an unlicensed check-cashing operation running out of the restaurant, which was incorporated as Viriato Corp. And owned by Abel Rodriguez. Over a 4-year stretch, the state alleged they pushed more than $400 million in checks through the dining room and collected over $9 million in fees on it. The pitch was simple. Bring a check, no ID required. Federal law requires a currency transaction report on anything over 10 grand, and prosecutors said those reports never got filed. That's why people came. Under-the-table payroll, hidden income, money that needed to stop being traceable. The cash itself came from Puccio's licensed operation, Tri-State Check Cashing, which would take one bundled check from Viriato for a few $100,000 and file paperwork on that single check instead of the 50 individual ones behind it. New Jersey caps check cashing fees at 2.21%, and these guys charged up to 3%. So part of the case against a Genovese money laundering operation is that they were overcharging by 79 hundredths of a percent, Rodriguez kept 1%. The rest went to Puccio. A quarter of that went to Manuel Rodriguez, and a slice of that went up to soldier Vito Alberti and Capo Charles Chucky Tuzo. Everybody took a taste on the way up, like a tip pool with prison sentences attached. Pucillo pleaded guilty to first-degree conspiracy to commit money laundering, and the state recommended 10 years. Alberti got 5. Manuel Rodriguez got 4. And Abel Rodriguez, the man who owned the building where all of it physically happened, pleaded guilty in 2019 to third-degree unlicensed check cashing and walked out with 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and a $15,000 fine. The restaurant is still open today, and if you're bringing a check, that window closed in 2014. Next, Belmont Tavern in Belleville. 12 Bloomfield Avenue, right where Belleville, Bloomfield, and Newark shove into each other. If you don't know what you're looking for, you'll drive past it, because it's a brick box with a yellow sign and the confidence of a place that has never needed to advertise. Open since 1967, cash only, no reservations, first come, first served, which means people gather outside before the doors open and everybody there already knows what they're getting. The reason is Stretch's Chicken Savoy. Charles Stretch Verdicchio got the recipe from his mother, put it on the menu in the late 60s, and accidentally invented a regional dish. Bone-in chicken, garlic, grated cheese, herbs, roasted hard, then hit with red wine vinegar so the skin caramelizes into something that shouldn't be legal. Every restaurant in North Jersey has tried to reverse engineer it. Every one of them is wrong, and they put it on the menu anyway. The Belleville-North Newark border was working territory for crews tied to the Genovese, De Cavalcante, and Gambino families for decades, and the Belmont Tavern sat in the middle of it. On any given night, the room held wise guys, cops, city workers, and a family celebrating a communion, all eating the same chicken and pretending the other tables weren't there. That's what just happened when you were one of the best Italian spots in North Jersey during that era. Next, Knife and Fork Inn, Atlantic City. This one is in the history books. It opened in 1912, where Atlantic and Pacific Avenues collide, founded as a private men's drinking club by Atlantic City's actual power structure, including Mayor William Riddle and Commodore Louis Quinley, the boss who ran the city before Nucky Johnson ran the city. The building looks like a small Flemish castle got lost on the way to Belgium. The second floor had curtained alcoves and a ladies' lounge where women waited because they weren't allowed at the bar, and the upper floors were for gambling and whatever else needed that much distance from the street. Prohibition arrived, and the Knife and Fork's response was to keep serving liquor at the bar in the open for years. The widely accepted explanation is that Nucky Johnson, Atlantic County Treasurer, functional ruler of the city, host of the 1929 conference that put Capone, Lansky, and Luciano on the same boardwalk, was a regular, and places where Nucky was a regular did not get raided. That is, until the feds got involved. Federal agents came through and destroyed every bottle in the building. Membership collapsed, and in 1927, the Lotz family bought it, ripped the bar out entirely, and turned it into a restaurant because they determined Prohibition was going to be permanent. That's a hell of a call to get wrong. Today, the Dougherty family runs it, the same family behind Doc's Oyster House, which opened in 1897 and is the only restaurant in town older than this one. There's a Prohibition mural on the wall, and the porch scene from the 1980 film Atlantic City with Burt Lancaster and Susan Sarandon was shot in what's now the Terrace. You can order lobster thermidor in a room where the mayor's private club drank illegally under political protection, and the strangest part is how normal it feels. Back up north, we're at Barge Inn in Jersey City. John Marteau opened it in 1969. His daughter Linda runs it now with her husband Peter, who everybody calls Bitsy, and her brother runs the Barge Inn Saloon around the corner. The murals of Italian landscapes on the walls were painted by Anna Cucci, whose husband Anthony was the mayor of Jersey City at the time. There's no famous indictment naming the Barge Inn. However, longtime neighborhood lore associates the place with historical underground gambling, and an informal, organized crime presence back in the day. This is a downtown Jersey City Italian restaurant that opened in 1969 in a city where the line between politics, the docks, and the guys who took care of things was very blurred. And it looks so exactly like the movie version of the Mafia world that they filmed Lily of the Feast there, a short starring Paul Sorvino, who you may remember slicing garlic with a razor blade in a considerably more famous production. There was an FBI raid at the Barge Inn in 2014. However, there is no publicly available information on what the raid was for. Agents at the scene declined to answer any questions on the nature of the raid. Regardless, this is still a great place to eat and drink, and you should definitely check it out if you're in the area. Next up, Libretti's in Orange, 554 Nassau Street, open since 1950. Libretti's spent decades as a serious dining room in Essex County, which in that era meant it sat in the working neighborhood of both the De Cavalcante family and Newark's Genovese crews. The lore is that law enforcement treated the parking lot as a filing cabinet, sitting across the street, writing down plates during dinners and parties. Big Italian restaurant, big party, everybody dressed, everybody arriving in something with a V8. 76 years later, this place now runs karaoke nights every Friday and Saturday. There's a piano and microphones in the lounge, and somewhere out there, a retired agent who spent Friday nights photographing that lot is learning the room he watched now hosts a 58-year-old accountant from Bloomfield singing Sweet Caroline. The food is still the real thing, coming in portions that assume you have a family waiting in the car. While still open as of August 2026, there seems to be plans for the city to demolish this place to make way for apartment buildings. Exactly what we need: demolish classic Jersey history to make place for nondescript beige apartments. Great job, City of Orange. Next, we're at Sammy's Ye Old Cider Mill in Mendham. Route 24 in Morris County, and there's no sign out front. If you don't already know, you're not supposed to find it, a policy that started for legal reasons and stuck around for aesthetic ones. Samuel Fornaro started it as a speakeasy in the 1920s. The sign inside says 1933, and his grandchildren took it over in 1995 and ran it for 30 years. The way it works makes no sense to anyone under 60. You walk in and order immediately, standing up before you sit anywhere. Then you go downstairs to the original Prohibition bar and drink while they cook it, and when it's ready, somebody calls you upstairs. The steaks are dry aged and hand-cut on site. Abner Longy Zwillman, the Newark bootlegger who genuinely was one of the most powerful organized crime figures in America, routed liquor through rural Morris County, and this basement was allegedly one of the rooms where you had to be vouched for before you got in. Zwillman was real, his operation was real, but whether he personally had anything to do with this specific basement has not been 100% confirmed in court. One note before you drive out there: the Fornaro family sold after 30 years and closed under their ownership at the end of 2025, with new owners taking over. It's still not open yet as of August 2026, but the new owners are said to be continuing the original operation and have the rights to original recipes. Finally, Costa's in Roselle Park. 120 Chestnut Street, family-owned, over 50 years in, and it's the town Italian restaurant in the fullest sense. Dining room, pizzeria, banquet hall, catering. If you grew up around there, you've eaten Costa's at somebody's christening, somebody's graduation, and somebody's funeral, probably in that order. Union County was De Cavalcante country in a way that isn't debatable. Elizabeth was the family's home ground, and Kenilworth, 2 square miles about 4 minutes up the road, is where Sam the plumber de Cavalcante ran an entire American crime family out of a plumbing and heating supply business, while the FBI pulled roughly 2,300 pages of transcript out of a bug in his office between 1961 and 1965. So the story that local members use Costa's as a lunch spot to talk construction and waste hauling is exactly what gets said about a big Italian restaurant sitting in the middle of that map. File it as plausible lore rather than proven. The map is real, the family was real, and the portions are aggressive. Drop any stories you have in the comments. I know you have one, and I know it's about a guy who knew people. Tell me anyway.